And now, on with the show.
This week on Breakfast Talk, we talk about the most epic Titan battle of our age. We're talking about Godzilla vs. Kong, baby. Super excited. If you guys have been watching Breakfast Talk, you know this is what we're all about. This is our first discussion panel. This week on Breakfast Talk, Godzilla vs. Kong. Let's begin.
This is episode 10 of Breakfast Talk.
Breakfast Talk. Oh, God. Like a partnership, like a coexistence. And I think like the whole the whole like Godzilla thing that they had, it actually was like in honor of like a Godzilla, and I don't think it was ripped off from like a living one. Maybe it was like a dead one, like something that they died, and they're like, okay, we'll grab his spikes and we'll make an axe out of it, so like, so again, I think it goes back to they're setting up
open-ended. I didn't think about that. Like, I figured it was just from a past. So because the thing with the Godzilla line, like there's even a movie at one point called Son of Godzilla where there is a baby Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks ridiculous, which is hilarious if you ever want to laugh at what people used to think were monsters. Right. But basically there's been a lineage over like I think they say millions of years. I don't remember how long it's to last, but basically Godzilla will lay eggs, and eventually when they die, the egg will hatch, and like there's a new Godzilla to replace them.
Mm-hmm.
So in my view, the way I saw it was the rivalry means one of them is always the alpha, and at one point the Kong won, killed them and made an axe, and then he was the reigning champion.
It keeps like switching back and forth.
Yeah, that's how I read into that, but that's what I mean about the fact that it was kind of cool that it was almost like, okay, that rivalry's over. You need to work together. There's a bigger threat.
Right. And I think again, that's what they're setting up. They're setting up something bigger, like in universe, and that like the again that touches on like the throne room thing. So I think they're setting up this thing where it's like again, there's a partnership now. And what's funny is what you just said. Like so, the Godzilla lays eggs and eventually dies. So at the point where there's a baby Godzilla, there needs to be an alpha. So that's when like the Kongs would come in, right? And like they would basically take up that space and potentially even raise that baby Godzilla. You know what I mean? Potentially protect it and make sure it reaches adulthood so that it can take over that job essentially when it's a mature adult. So like there's a lot of room to speculate is definitely what we're talking about here. Like we're definitely beyond the movie and into speculation at this point. But yeah, I think the throne room, the setting, like they did that purposefully. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely a purposeful thing. The way that they advanced human technology from the 2014 movie is, obviously a purposeful thing. So there's definitely a lot more that's coming in the near future. That's going to be more, I think, like again, universal threats. They might tap those other Titans for those movies.
Additional stuff in this movie that was very not related to the plot line, so that they have so many open-ended stories to start with. Like, I definitely very much like that. Like, the fact that they only had Mechagodzilla, but they were sending eggs someplace, you know what I mean? They had monsters from the center of the earth. Because I looked up, like I said, all the old movies, and they have a ton of monsters to pull from. And then, like we talked last episode, how there are, or maybe just a couple episodes ago, we were talking about how they mention a certain number, and that's definitely more than the old monsters. And so they had to either create more, or maybe they're just, making something up. I don't know what else they could be doing, but it was interesting that basically like the thing with the alpha, the fact that Godzilla could recognize even the mechanical Titan, it's kind of like cool like that. And that's why like he sensed Kong in the water. Like there's just something that they all sense each other, which is interesting because all the stuff happening with what's the name of the organization?
Apex.
No, well, yeah, Apex is the company. But you're talking about Monarch.
Monarch, yeah, like Monarch, and you have Apex, but yeah, both of them. Just like all the stuff that's going on, all the research that's going on, that was like in the background. Like remember when like the daughter calls the dad and they're already doing something, right? They didn't show like any of that.
No, yeah.
Which is like, what were they doing this whole time? Like he was in 3 different cities, and like every single time he was shown, like it's very cool. Yeah, there's just all this stuff going on in the background, and then Godzilla leaves and Kong's there. which first off, I still think, oh, that was the other funny one when Kong, I think it was before Godzilla stands up and basically goes, "Are you still going to try to fight me?" That thing. But it's like right after they beat Mechagodzilla and Kong kind of just like falls and sits down. When I was watching it, my brother made me crack up because he's like, "Oh God, I can sure use a pizza."
Some
like,
beers or something.
yeah, he's like so dead. And like, oh yeah, like even how they revived him was like super interesting. Like taking like the device and basically making it like an EMP. Like it was very clever, like little.
But also, yeah, huge hole right there. Huge hole. Because this researcher dude is essentially now an engineer and he knows how to like overwrite the system that he just knew existed, essentially. Like,
yeah.
So they should have used maybe another character in place there, like and kind of had more characters and that survived,
It's also interesting, yeah, because like both the dad and daughter die of the that was
yeah, the evil people, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like it was kind of interesting because there's no now we don't know any leader of that organization right now.
And okay, so Sagawa's son, who was the pilot of Mechagodzilla, he's dead too.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like that's what I'm saying. Like there's nobody we know who's in charge of that right now.
Yeah.
It's super open-ended, which is that's what I'm saying, like 7 out of 10 overall movie. Just because like there's so many things like that were like so open-ended that it
And like I said, I even think that was done on purpose, like because like I just like every other movie, like you're gonna have a fandom that's just gonna pick apart all the little things, like it's gonna nitpick all the things about your movie. So I think that they just realize like we're just gonna lean into our concept and whatever comes from that, like if we have to make some plot holes that people can pick apart later, so be it. Like
Well,
I think they're totally comfortable with what they're doing.
I was gonna say that could even be on purpose in the sense of stuff to talk about.
Oh yeah,
If you think about it, now we're going to talk about it because we're Godzilla fans.
extra promotion.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's one of those things where
Yeah.
leaving that stuff. Oh, other random Godzilla thing. Did you know that the twins were fairies?
Oh no.
Yeah, I forgot that. Once I heard it and I saw an old clip, I remembered this. But I like if you had asked me off the cuff, I would never have like thought about this. But the twins of the
Mothra
are actually supposedly fairies,
Hmm.
which is really interesting. So then in this universe, I don't know if that's the case, like they're ancestors of them, or if they just happen to be humans related to them. But it is interesting to think about like some of the weird connections that they kept and yet changed.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely excited to see where they build this universe, and the fact that it was like mega successful, like think about it. It's the fourth in a series of movies, and I think it was the best selling one. Right, so like that's huge. Like
it was definitely the most satisfying one. I think that like all the other ones, like they were kind of slow burns. Like even King of the Monsters, kind of like you felt like it could have gone a little farther. Like you know what I mean in terms of the monster battles, right? But like this one was like all about destruction, monster battle, like
3 major battles.
Yeah.
I really liked Skull Island a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
I actually almost forgot that I had seen that. Like as I'm watching Godzilla versus Kong, I'm like, I don't know if I saw Skull Island, and then like it kept showing little things here and there. I'm like, oh, that's Skull Island. Like
Yeah.
so long ago, I was just like.
What's interesting about that movie, or I found interesting about that movie? I don't know if it was just the writing or the environment, but it was like the human story from that one was actually compelling. Like the other movies, like they weren't really compelling, and you could kind of make the argument where if they were necessary, right? Like, but in Skull Island, it felt like it was actually like necessary to have those characters, and like just the writing and the mood itself was very like it was fine, like it was satisfying, and it didn't interrupt the kind of vibe that you were hoping for with Kong, right? So yeah, I thought there was especially like in comparison to, let's say, the original Godzilla movie, I didn't necessarily find the purpose in having the human side of it. Like I like Bryan Cranston a lot, I love him, and I thought like again the writing for that component was fine, but just how it compared to and how it like meshed with the monster side of it, I didn't feel like it was actually necessary,
Yeah, it didn't add to the story.
And then the fact that it wasn't continued on throughout these other movies was just kind of like, well, then, yeah, it's not necessary at all, because this is not a recurring character. This is not a recurring family line of characters. There's not even a mention to these people in these other movies. So it's like, it just felt like it was unnecessary. But like Kong Skull Island, like that felt like very necessary. And it does make, like, it continued on because they have the whole research center and shit like that. That's like part of Monarch. And like there was I guess, an end result to those people being there, and that, like, that movie had a continuation to some degree in this set of movies. So it's like, yeah, that just made more sense. It felt better. Like, it felt, again, like more, I don't know, satisfying in terms of the human element.
It's probably because of the fact that, aside from the fact that monster battles were friggin' epic, like that was definitely, like, that was so reminiscent of an old Godzilla made new. Like, that felt awesome. So I think that part was great. And then the fact that now there is a universe built out, you know what I mean? Like, we now know there's stuff going on in the background. They didn't need to explain as much stuff. So
Yeah.
they could just have the story move along for the human side.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the human side felt better in this one. And we were satisfied with the monster battle because now it's built out. Like, now I think that they could make any freaking movie they want. And like, I'm watching it. Like, they got me hooked. Like, the Mechagodzilla, I was gonna say, my favorite thing about Mechagodzilla was what they added to him to make it realistic in a monster. Like, the fact that, like, when you had to punch Godzilla, he's a heavy metal robot. So as he's swinging his arm, all of a sudden, like, booster packs on his arm and back throw his body into it because he wouldn't be able to move that fast.
Right.
So instead, they had to add, like, rocket propulsion on the back side of him. I was like, that was epic. Like,
I thought like there was a huge cool part, which is actually from the original, with the whole missiles, you know what I mean? Firing missiles. But I just thought that was like super cool, because it was like the opening salvo of this fight. And he's like, let's go. He just starts firing missiles at Godzilla.
Like, oh, hey, what the fuck?
Exactly.
Yeah,
No, but yeah.
At one point, Godzilla's on the ground getting beaten up, and he's just, Uncle, I'm gonna take a time out real quick.
Yeah, there was definitely some vicious shit that was going on in this movie for sure.
Godzilla took a beating.
I like how he charges up, like each spike lights up, and then you're like, oh, something cool is about to happen. And then I like when he opens like the jaw of Mechagodzilla, and they just like.
Yeah, it's definitely, again, satisfying movie. And I really, honestly, I hope that, like, say HBO, like, I know they're probably not connected to like the direction of it or anything, but I really hope that there's some kind of like some executive that goes, hey, why don't you just make your shit exclusive to HBO? And you know what, we'll make like a series. Like, we're really, like, series are really popular right now. We can put a lot of cinematic quality into these things, nowadays, and we can make these, we can make a mini series that's like 6, and like just like Falcon Winter Soldier, and these things will be fucking awesome. And we have a huge fan base already. We have like these things that are already popular that are proof that this can work as like as a model. So I really hope that they dive into that. I hope that there's executives that are at HBO that are like, yo, Godzilla franchise, let's make this shit happen.
Well, that was the thing I was going to say with the old movies. Like, it started in 1954, but there was like maybe from 1954 until like 2004.
Yeah.
There was
Shin Godzilla
almost every single year.
Yeah.
There's a ton of them, right? Like, they some of them were I think in like the early 2000s were remakes, but outside of that, they were like new ones. So they have a ton to pull from. Like, they're not out of ideas. But one thing I was just realizing would be actually interesting to see. I don't know if they can pull it off, and I'd be nervous if it would affect the universe badly. But it would actually be interesting, like you said, the human element, to like have what was the show? Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. have that
Monarch, yeah.
Monarch, yeah. Like, that would be a really interesting way to keep the universe like alive while they spend a ton of like Hollywood money on those monster movies.
That would actually, yeah.
That CGI is like stupid expensive, but like you could do the human side like they did with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. much cheaper.
Yeah.
People remembering, like, hey, don't forget this world.
Yeah, exactly.
And boom, another monster movie.
And what they could do is, have that human element show or that miniseries, right? And then just explore like the archaeology finds and all these kinds of things. Like, like there's tons of people who like watch dinosaur stuff, you know what I mean, who like just really enjoy paleontology. Yeah, I mean, just like even the boring stuff of dinosaur.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I literally watch YouTube videos of like fucking megalodon and shit, like, you know what I mean? So like that kind of stuff is interesting. So if they were to take that route and be like, here's the information side of of this universe, like that itself would be interesting.
I was gonna say, even like how Apex had this whole underground, what's it called, the shipping thing,
Mhm.
stuff, across the world. Like the fact that they had a bunch of stuff, we only saw like a glimpse of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So they could be doing tons of other side projects. Like maybe they're creating, I don't know, robot cops. Like it doesn't matter. Like they could be doing whatever the heck they want,
Right.
trying to keep the world safe. And the idea is like that by building that out, they'll have something to play with in the movies, like how in Agents of Shield, like there's stuff going on that they can then call back in the movie.
Yeah.
So like it's a cool idea to like get that world built out while waiting for another Godzilla movie. You know, like,
Yeah. And like I said, I hope there's execs somewhere, and forgive me for trusting execs, because traditionally in Hollywood they have made some terrible decision choices that have conflicted with, like again, Snyder Cut. That's exactly what happened. The execs, well, and there was a lot of circumstances, like his daughter had committed suicide when they were filming it, so it was just like there was a lot of stuff going on around that production. So it was more than that, but I'm sure there was like execs that were kind of like trying to input their or hinder his creativity and stuff like that, and that happens throughout Hollywood all the time. So I really hope that there's somebody who understands what these movies are as an executive and can say, like, let's do something else with this before we have another movie come out, before we have these big Hollywood blockbusters. Like they don't all need to be that. Like they don't all, like, we can continue this this universe without having these huge movies that are like huge budget and like aimed at blockbuster success, like kind of the Marvel approach, which I don't know if you guys know this, but they have a tier system now. So they have like, we're gonna spend this kind of budget on these kinds of shows, or we're gonna go with a big ass blockbuster, or we're gonna go with something like an Ant-Man, where it's like in between those, and it's aimed at doing something that's like, again, it's like, yeah, it has CG, yeah, it has like famous actors, but it's not blown out to this blockbuster proportion, and we're not trying to make 100 million off this thing. If we make 70 mil, we're good. If we make 50 mil, we're good, because the production costs are so low.
Because that's like what they were getting hurt on the DC side. They were trying to make every single one of them a blockbuster hit.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to make Aquaman a blockbuster hit, like not at least not the first time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he's that character, like, you're more useless than Aquaman.
Exactly.
Hey, you're lucky you're not doing that over here. Hey, you like fish? If you don't like fish, you don't like what I just did. Or starfish, but they throws the starfish.
Come in the water and say that. Yeah, dare you.
Yeah, so like it's one of those things where they overhype a movie. Like they're like, oh, like, we love it. It's like, oh, I'm glad you do, but like you're not going to convince the fans to love it in one movie.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think that was the initial problem with the Justice League, was like that they didn't have enough buildup to make that Justice League so epic. And the Snyder Cut, it kind of helped with that, I think, because it was like, first of all, we already have the original movie to compare it to, so like by comparison, like, oh wow, this is so much better. It's more thought out and stuff like that. But then also, it was so much more like dramatic. Like it had more of those dramatic elements where you have like, there was a lot of slow-mo in it, but it was done for effect.
We should save that. We should have an
Sure.
episode just on the Snyder
We
Cut.
kind of have to, yeah.
Yeah,
We kind of
like, there's so much to talk about that, but basically, yeah. Back to Godzilla, like that idea that you could I would much more prefer the Marvel approach of like how we only had Mechagodzilla. Cool, like just do one. If that's cheaper, I don't care. Like I would rather him fight one monster at a time over and over again, and then do one more King of the Monsters where there's like a dozen monsters. Like I forgot. I think I actually thought it was called Godzilla King of the Monsters, the original one. I think it was Godzilla Destroys All Monsters. That was
yeah. Yeah.
And there's like 15 in there. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that if they build all this out, because I think I mentioned this before, one of the characters that even big Godzilla fans, not all of them know about it unless they're probably younger. And I found out why. It's because this movie came out like when I was a baby. and it was Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. Like character is like it's literally looks like Godzilla but blue and giant crystalline spikes on it, and it's way more powerful. Like Godzilla needs his friends to help. So I think that I don't remember the other monster first, but there's some monster that Godzilla fights. They collect DNA from Godzilla and they merge it with, I think it's like humans and plants. I think that's what they do, and they make the creature Biollante. That's also one of the most powerful monsters in the universe. But like they can build up to that, build up to Space Godzilla. They can add. Do you remember Angulosaur?
No.
The one that crawls on the ground and he has a turtle shell on his back.
Oh yeah. He spins, yeah.
And he would throw himself or he would spin. Yeah, exactly. So like the point is like they can slowly introduce him like they introduced Rodan, and like Mothra can come back, right? Because he's gonna like just.
I think they actually even already brought in Inglis, because I don't know if you remember the
the mountain that moved.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he's already in there.
So like that's like they kind of have this thing where like they can keep building out this universe, build out the characters, even bring back potentially Mecha Ghidorah. Depends on, because they didn't show the rest of the body, like what happened, and they only had one head. So it would be super interesting because I think we were talking about this before. I think it had 2 real heads, 1 robot head, right?
No, 2 robots and 1.
2 robot heads.
Yeah. Well, it was like the heads were fine. Like the heads looked like Ghidorah heads, but like the neck was like metal and shit, you know?
Yeah, I'm trying to
remember. No, but what's interesting is I think what's funny is because like
I had 2 real heads. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
That was my point. Was they only got 1 head?
Gotcha.
That's what I thought too. I think we talked about it last time, and then I realized I'm like, if they only got 1 head, what happened to the other 2? That's because they're actually still on the body. They rebuild his wings. They put metal supports on his legs and his whole body, like the torso, because that was all messed up. That's all wrapped up, and then they have 1 robot head in the middle.
That's probably gonna be the next. That's probably gonna be the next like mecha thing, because at the
next time they do one, that's
credits of King of the Monsters. No, yes. The end credits of King of the Monsters, there's that is shown, the head or whatever is shown of that.
Yeah. Well, that's the head they use in Godzilla vs. Kong. Remember you watched Reverse Order?
Yeah.
So like, but the whole point was they only showed 1 head, and the original Mecha Ghidorah only has 1 robot head, which I thought it was 2, but now that I know it's 1, it makes sense they didn't show the rest of the body because they can't, because it leaves it open ended. That like. He's a Titan. We don't know. Like if they were still able to use his telekinetic powers, they can definitely reanimate him.
No, and one of his abilities is that he can regenerate. Like that's part of like his ability.
So I hope they don't do that one next. Like they could. Like I'd be still stoked to watch it, but like I want enough movies that like 2 movies go by and then
we forget about him. Yeah. We want to kind of lose him in the shuffle.
And I think the other big monster Godzilla fights, I think this was actually after Space Godzilla, is Destroyer. So it's Godzilla versus Destroyer. That's another
Destroyer.
Big yeah, and he was like this giant thing too. I think he was like much bigger than Godzilla too. So it's like something else that he had to deal with. But there's like those are just the most recent of like the movies when I was a kid. Those were like 89. 91, right? Like 94, like they were all like right around that time.
Yeah.
And but like there's still tons of the old ones, like the sea monster, the smog monster. So those could be like those black sites where they had like, what did they see? It was like 23 of them.
Yeah, there was I forget the number. If King of Monsters, they have that. They have the like even the map of where they're at and shit. Yeah. What I think is interesting too is like again, so like Kong goes essentially into the Hollow Earth, right? But like we assume Godzilla's still like on normal, like on the planet, like surface, right? He didn't go down there. So what's cool is they could actually have 2 sets of movies where it's like Kong versus this Titan and then Godzilla versus this other Titan. So like you can actually have like these kind of like dueling, like they're in the same universe, but it's 2 different movies.
How do you think about that? They can do Avatar stuff in I was gonna say Middle Earth, in Hollow Earth, right? Like they could do like Avatar style movies with that too, because most of that stuff was just like it was all CGI, like it was all fake. So like,
100%.
Do whatever you want in like that area, and like that could be a whole other thing. Like if they do like the what's it called, Agents of Shield style movie, like or a TV show. I mean, like they could go into
Just following Hollow Earth. Yeah.
yeah, like they could just have people exploring that, trying to get the energy stuff from it, all that. Oh, that was the other one
Like-
too. That would be another plot hole that messed with me. They just like copied how the energy from the earth is made and then just made it. That threw me off.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that at all. Like I don't know if maybe they made it or maybe they just understood it so they could adjust the robot to use Ghidorah's. I didn't understand.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was more or less like they had like this missing puzzle piece. Like they could generate the energy to actually do it, but like I guess like to like suit a huge being like that, it had to have a certain frequency, and they were missing that puzzle piece, and then copying that frequency signature from the core is like, oh, okay, now we know how to do it. But yeah, it really didn't. It was a very loose kind of plot line right there. I really thought that they had to like bring back some piece of a rock or something like that, or and then they would, oh, this is going to go into the core and that's going to, help it function.
I thought they might put it like into the Ghidorah skull, and maybe that would like amp up the connection so that it worked effortlessly, or like I didn't know what they were going to do with it, but they just like copied it, and I was like, what? Like it just seems so weird.
It was like a copy and paste kind of thing. It's like, oh, it works now. All right, cool.
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
ready.
But then ironically, the guy who was like setting it all up dies, and the guy who controlled Mechagodzilla dies, and the daughter of the guy dies. You're like, who the hell's gonna carry that on? Like, did it get destroyed? Like so that, I do like that idea. Like maybe like they lose it. They don't have the energy or the whatever the information for the energy anymore. So it would be super interesting to see like what route they go with that, I guess, because it was
After
Pretty sure the next bad guy is that guy that was the bad guy in King of the Monsters from Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah,
He's probably
the
definitely
eco-terrorist.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's probably gonna be.
Well, I think what's probably the coolest, and we're touching on it right now, is that we don't know we have no indication of where this thing is going from this movie. You know what I mean? And I think that's cool because from these other movies, you had some indication that like, okay, so they left like a clue in like say Skull Island. They're like, well, Kong can grow bigger. He's just a kid. He's just a baby. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna get much bigger than this, right? So like you have an indication, okay, he's going to be in this series at some point, and he's going to be a rival character or whatever to Godzilla. He still has room to grow. Like in in the original Godzilla movie, you have like, oh, there's these like pockets where these ancient titans are sleeping. You know what I mean? Like you have those indications. Like in this movie, you have zero indication of where they're going with this. Like they set up a universe. So they're going somewhere, but there's just no particular direction.
That's what I was saying too. Like as a normal movie, that's the reason I give that 7 out of 10 is there's so much open-ended stuff that it's almost too much. As a Godzilla fan, I'm excited because I don't care where they go.
Yeah.
I just want to see Godzilla again.
You're just like manja.
Yeah, like the what's it called? The freaking the music too. Like they took all the old music, mastered it and made it fucking epic. Like I could watch that. I could listen to that stuff forever. Like like all those things they like brought them back. Like oh man, I was so jacked about that stuff. And the other thing I thought of too, that it didn't bother me. I didn't even notice it until after, or I didn't register until after the movie when like Mechagodzilla first looks in the window. I realized later like he just looks like a Decepticon.
And which window? What are you talking about?
Before he eats the guy. You know what I'm talking about? When he's like, hey, behind you, and they're backing up, and then Mechagodzilla.
Oh, Mechagodzilla. Sorry,
when you look at his eyes, he looks just like a Decepticon.
Just needed that. Exactly.
But definitely 10 out of 10 Godzilla, 10 out of 10, or maybe 9 out of 10 monster movie. No, I get 10 out of 10. I don't know a better monster movie. Like
I think it was again, I think it has everything to do with intent. And when you go into this movie and you know what the intent of the movie is and you can just enjoy it, I think it was fun. It was a fun movie. You can pick numerous holes. You can speculate all day. You can say this didn't make sense, whatever. It's a movie at the end of the day. It's meant for your entertainment. So like that's all that you really need to know, right? Like that's all you need to focus on. And I think for that reason, this was a very successful movie in my opinion. And, you know, not being overly critical of certain aspects of it actually makes it that much better, because you to me, again, first of all, Hollywood is kind of like a money making machine, right? So like they do a lot of things to try and make money, right? So like, and some of that comes at the cost of the creative aspect of it. So it was good to see that they just went with the creative side of it. They just said, let's take all this stuff that we have and we're just going to mix this shit up and we're going to do something different. And we're going to, you know, try our best with the CG to make it look cool. We're going to, you know, we're going to have all these different, you know, fight patterns and different monsters and elements and leave it open-ended and, you know, leave people guessing, like all of those different things. Like that's not traditional Hollywood. Like traditional Hollywood likes to kind of like wrap those bows and make sure people know like what they're seeing and what they're getting into. And like, you know, if there's going to be a sequel, they prep them for it, you know? So it's like, this movie kind of went outside of that Hollywood boundary. And I thought that in itself is successful to me, because I think it's more towards what the fans want and less what Hollywood wants.
Well,
So,
I think that like you were saying, like what the fans want, it's interesting that, so like when right before Mechagodzilla came out, my brother had no idea that was happening. He didn't watch any of the trailers, and they don't show it at all in the trailers.
it was a
They definitely did not marble their trailers up where they're like, hey, you know, on the next
show you,
Dragon Ball Z, Goku beats Frieza, but what will happen, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, like, you gotta skip that trailer. But when it comes to this one, like they did a great job not doing that. It was all focused on Kong and Godzilla. But like you said, with the creative side, they kept so much of the original Godzilla lore that all of the Godzilla fans are satisfied. They added a ton of new stuff that made for an epic plot line. So like we hyped the crap out of this movie and Greg still enjoyed it, which means that even our over expectation of the movie did not dilute it.
exactly.
If you're going in with no expectation, this is a great movie. You know, I'm just like, you know, it's one of those ones where I'm pretty sure, like, other than like maybe the violence, like you can watch with like your kids, like not like an 8-year-old maybe, but like you could watch with like your
Even
maybe
still,
even-
even still, it's monster violence. You know what I mean? Like it's
monster violence. It's not a lot of like blood and gore.
no. And yeah, and I think again, it's a solid series of movies too. Like beyond or previous to this movie itself, it's a solid series. Like they do good casting. You know what I mean? In terms of the human element, they've mixed in the CGI with the real life stuff, and there's not like a lot of points where you're like, this is bad CGI and this doesn't look real. And like, you know, even from 2014 on to today, you know, so like they've done a really good job.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think there's been a point where I've noticed the CGI. Like I get lost in the world, I'm there till the end, and then I'm But the Mechagodzilla thing I was gonna say was like, like when that was happening, I was like slapping my brother. I'm like, and he's like, what? And I'm like, because I knew, like, because we had talked about like what we were speculating it was gonna be, and like at that moment I realized I knew it was gonna be Mechagodzilla, and I was so excited.
When you seen the eye, right? You're like, that's it.
No, before that, I'm talking about like the build up to like what
okay.
happened there. Like that whole, like for 5 minutes, I knew what was gonna happen. And like in the very beginning, I actually at first I wasn't even sure like they might have done the Mecha Ghidorah thing, but I felt like that'd still be too early, so it had to be Mechagodzilla. And so like I was like, this is the scene, it's happening now, like it's good, like it's. I was like, oh, I was losing my mind, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you see like the step out of it, and I was just like, yes, it's like, yeah, God, like. Rip that thing apart. I forgot that thing. I sent like some monster out and it just like rips it apart.
It was a skull crusher. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was like, it was such an epic. Oh, and that's the other thing too. Like with the skull crushers, like if they did a whole Apex or Monarch series or like the combination of like, there's all of those smaller monsters they can still play with. They don't have to have Titans. Well, technically, I don't know if they're probably all still considered Titans. They're just, you know, the infant versions or the small Titans.
And again, they introduced more in this, like in the Hollow Earth. So there's different species of these, like from small to large.
Not only that, there's the giant hole in the earth because of Godzilla, where as they're repairing that,
instant access.
As they're repairing that, it could be like, something came out. You know what I mean? Like there's so much they can do with that.
Yep.
Also, the fact that they had, because I kept saying Tokyo, but Hong Kong, like with all the lights in the city as it gets destroyed, like even that was like, because like I'll say that wasn't in the old Godzilla movies because it was so
No.
old. They were like, it was mostly just grayscale, buildings. And so now it's like all super well lit. You see Kong swinging through like it's like a concrete jungle, right? Like it's just awesome.
Yeah. I thought that was the coolest part, was like his ability to like maneuver through those buildings and like avoid the blasts and shit like that, and like jump off of them and hide. He was like waiting for Godzilla on that one building, like, come on, bitch, come on.
I also love that, like, because like we were saying, like Godzilla's supposed to be clearly the king, but they still made it an epic battle. Like the fact that Godzilla's like breath was just just blowing up, like just cutting through buildings, and Kong swinging around like, oh Jesus, like must go faster, must go faster.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, all I gotta say is, the fanfare that these movies are building up, and movies like it. So like the Sonic movie, you know what I mean? Like I thought that was brilliant. Actually, I thought it was a great movie.
Still have not seen Sonic.
You should watch it. It's actually really good.
I wanted to see. I just got caught up and haven't watched it yet. But yeah,
Gotta watch it before the second one comes out, which is like next year.
Yeah, it's coming out soon. You got Tails coming out. You probably got Knuckles.
I saw
classic Eggman Robotnik. Yeah,
that Tails trailer, like where it just shows like the two tails like in the trailer, like that was epic. I was like, oh man, now I have to go see it.
No, Jim Carrey, dude, leading the helm, he was brilliant. That was a perfect role for him. Perfect casting.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how it was gonna be, so I'll definitely have to watch that.
So good, so good.
Jim Carrey and not like a Illuminati. I know, weird how he is. So yeah.
I mean, the guy's been through a lot through Hollywood. You know what I mean? He's seen all the weird shit that goes on behind closed doors, I'm sure. But beyond that, anyway. So, not talking about Jim Carrey as a person, but like in terms of like again the fanfare, they just keep like all these kids in cages. I've seen it.
No. Get the idea is they actually have a real Godzilla. He's just a baby.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a little one. It's the son of Godzilla. No, but dude, that character model, I just see it in my head every time we talk about it. It was horrible. No, but like again, the fanfare aspect of it. So like they're taking all these like retro ideas and they're really executing them well. Like it's not like where you're taking like, oh God, like what are some old movies that like maybe that King Kong movie that, they tried to redo it and they failed miserably, you know what I mean? And there's been other movies like that, and I just feel like they're doing it so much better now. Like they understand that, like maybe it's because the people that are making the movie are the original viewers of that movie. So like they have that, that nostalgia and retro feeling built in where they're actually fans.
I think it's just like the Marvel movies. Like they're doing a good job of keeping as much of the old stuff as needed so that fans are not disappointed.
Yeah.
Meaning real fans, right? Like the Godzilla movies, like they added a bunch of stuff to this, but there's so much of the original that's there that like I'm like, cool. I didn't even notice that you added new stuff. It felt like it was meant to be there. Like you always was. They just never talked about it. This is the new side.
Right.
That's all it is like too many movies either. They try to, like the Kong one, the King Kong one, where they tried to just like completely rehash an old movie. That almost never works. Like when they do make like
things change. Yeah, people's ideas of what's scary and what's all this kind of stuff.
And the other one is when they take an old idea and they make it so new. You're like, well, what the hell is this? Like you've lost all the old fans and it's not a good movie at all. Like what? So like this Godzilla like route and like the Marvel route of like, hey, let's take as much of the old lore as possible, keep that intact, and then just add this one thing to it that makes our story start. Like
again, I just think it's just like the age of comics coming into the cinema. I think this is like a brilliant time for anybody who's like a fan of like these retro materials, and I think it's much more like we're seeing these things come out so much and they're done well. Like now we're not afraid. Like I've heard that there's like a live action of Thundercats that's supposed to be.
Oh my God, that's kind of weird. I was literally thinking that. I was like, I was about to mention that.
And it's like before, like maybe 5 years ago, before these sets of movies have come out and stuff, and the success of the Marvel universe, I was like, I would be nervous about that. But now I'm like, they're gonna kill it. Like they're gonna do it really well. It's gonna be something that I actually like. It could turn into a series of movies that I'll probably watch. So I think it's just again like this time in cinema history is like really exciting for anybody that likes the comic book side of things, likes the kind of pure creative side, and then bringing it into like a live action context. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
I think it's also because like back when they first started making, like, say, the Godzilla movies, like that time when they were making other movies, like even like the Hulk TV show, for example, the fact that you finally got to see your character on TV was what made it cool.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at them, like, they're bad, like they're good, like they're entertaining, but they're not like good movies.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing is, like, now I think that because like CGI and like effects technology has gotten so, like, it's so surreal now,
Mm-hmm.
that you can take those old stories. Like, remember Sonic? Like they were able to release a demo of him early enough. People are like, nope.
Yep.
Nope. Right? Like,
And that was, dude, I mean, from the perspective of the animators, right? Holy shit, that sucked. But from the people who, like, for us as fans, like, they had to do that because if it
no one would have watched it. Like,
yeah,
like it's funny because like that, like, don't get me wrong, and it got like hype because of that. But yeah, you would have lost all of your money. Like, that would have been a terrible scenario. And but that's my point, though, is that they were able to make him look like he looks like the cartoon. I remember, like, yo, let's get some chili dogs. Like, I wanted chili dogs every day because of that cartoon. Like, I love that show. So like the fact they were able to make him look like that, amazing. Like, that was awesome. And like I think that now that you have the ability to at least make the characters look really good, you have the freedom to add a new storyline, because you're not like that's one of the elements you're keeping the same. Like, you're keeping lore the same, right? Maybe you're changing it, but you're keeping some of the lore the same, and you're at least making the character look really good. Like, Godzilla's like the Godzilla looks freaking amazing. Like,
yeah. And they've kept them consistent, from 2014 too.
2000 or 99. What was the one that
Oh, we're not going to talk about that one.
Yeah, The Mistake, right? So like that thing was garbage, and it's not just because they had bad CGI, although like looking back at it, it wasn't incredible. Like they messed with the design.
Yeah.
Like, they already made up they made up a new story. They added the fact that Godzilla had like a bunch of eggs, which didn't make any sense. Like, the whole point is it's one. It's always supposed to be like one lineage. And then they completely changed the design of Godzilla himself. Like, you messed with too many things.
Yeah.
And I like to tell this to like artists that we work with for like my brother's company. Like, you got to learn all the rules so you know which
ones. Yeah.
Right? Like, you can break a rule, but you can't break all of the rules. That's why like when you think of indie films, you're like, indie films suck. That's because like most of those indie films you're watching, they don't know any of the rules, or they're like, let's break all of them because it's like, no, like, it's when nostalgia meets novelty, right? Like, you need familiarity. You need that old, like, yes, I feel good, I remember this, and then, ooh, what's that? It's like marketing, like, in general, like, for business of any type. So like when it comes to these movies, like, I love the fact that they're keeping as much of the old stuff as they can before messing with it.
And what I think is cool, like, just to end this conversation completely, is I think that we've gotten to a point where, like, because there's so many creative properties in play, like, it's no longer like such a serious thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think fun is kind of coming back into these movies. You know what I mean? Like, they're again, the creative aspect is kind of dominating, like, because you have all these execs that destroyed movies previous, and now they're saying like, well, you know what? Like, take it out of our hands, and we're going to trust that you guys know what you're doing. And it's paying off. And that's the great thing, because now we're going to see more of that. Again, if we see a Thundercats movie live action, I'm sure it's going to live up to the hype. It's going to be good, and I'm confident in it. Whereas again, like maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would not have said that. But all right, yeah, we got to end this. But it was a good talk, and yeah, I think if you guys haven't watched Godzilla and you sat through this entire spoiler episode, then good for you. Go watch. Go watch it.
Watch what we didn't mention.
And also, if you really like this episode, definitely let us know. We're gonna do a couple more like this, but if you like this episode and you want to hear us rant about other movies, let us know. Maybe we'll watch them and do a rant on them if we haven't watched them already.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Let us know in the comments if you guys, like what we're talking about, you disagree with what we're talking about, you have your own opinions about, the Godzilla movie or,
Yeah, like, if you
basically
disagree
anything.
with us, just know you're wrong.
You're wrong, but it's okay. We'll accept that you're wrong in the comments because we just want people to comment. So it's okay. But yeah, let us know. And then if you do have any recommendations for things that you want us to rant about, please, do that too. Let us know.
Breakfast Club.
Like and share.
Like and
Please.
share.
Yes.
Hit subscribe. Hit the bell notification. Ring
Hit
that.
that. The Brecky bell, baby. Breakfast talk.